As we think about what it means to reimagine with a mindset of creativity, an invitation at the top of our meeting to think about that through two lenses. So reimagine, yes, is about pedagogy and practice, but it's also about where we started this entire process, which is epistemology, right? It's about reimagining our ways of being, our ways of knowing, our ways of showing up with kids and with each other. So I want to invite you to just take like a minute and a half or so and stop and jot before we move into a dyad to really arrive together. Who are you becoming as an educator? You know, what are you noticing? Small, maybe subtle shifts in your ways of being, your ways of engaging students. Who are you becoming? And then what elements of practice and or pedagogy are you even starting to reimagine in real time? Just a quick reminder, the guidelines, because we haven't been together for a while. In this listening structure, you're going to have some sacred time and space to just share whatever you want from that journal reflection with equal time, just about 2 minutes per person. In the structure, we don't advise or interrupt or even say like, that reminds me of, with the understanding that people can really solve their own problems when given time and space. We're going to maintain confidentiality when we come back, and we obviously don't criticize or complain about our colleagues when we're in the structure. So with all that said, I'm going to open up the rooms. Keep an eye out for the broadcast, which tells you to switch, or you can self-time 2 minutes each, and then we'll come back together. And we'd love to hear from at least maybe 2 or 3 of you when we come back about what's on top. So really would love to hear from a few folks. And if it's okay, I'm just going to shoulder tap some people to share like just a 1 minute reflection, anything that came out that felt interesting to you or where you had some emotional energy around it. So we'll start with Jessica.
Jennifer shared that she hiked the Grand Canyon. And I kind of feel like some of this work from time to time is that uphill battle and that hike. But I kind of shared that obviously there's the pedagogy around the shift and change, but I did share that I feel like at my core as a human being, I've shifted and changed, and I am like genuinely a different human being with a deeper understanding of equity and practice. And the way I look at everything now, it's completely shifted and changed. And like I'd said, my husband has seen a huge difference in just how I approach things, how I talk about things. So there's also this beautiful positivity coming out of a lot of this and how I'm, approaching, my practice. But massive shift for indigenizing my classroom with French. We have more resources now. So that's kind of a beautiful shift in the 3 years of our curriculum change. I have access to a lot more resources that didn't exist before.
Thank you, Jessica. I love how layered that was about yourself, your marriage, your indigenizing the curriculum, pedagogy, so many layers of shift and change there. Thank you. Thank you. Rafa, I'm going to tag you in.
Well, I was talking to my AP, Veronica. She mentioned about she's looking and working toward identifying and changing patterns of unfairness, especially for those students who are more in the margin. And along with that, what I said, I talked before her, and I said that I feel, and I think this is aligned with what she said, I feel that I'm becoming a teacher who looks more for the person than for the students. That look more for the needs more than for my demand as a teacher. So these are actually, I think, I complement very well each other.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you. Anna, can I tag you in?
Yeah, I shared that a shift that I'm noticing that I'm implementing this year is I'm focusing more on creating relationships among students, creating a classroom community, because I feel that in the past, I've done a lot of work and been pretty good about creating relationships with the students. But last year and with the pandemic and like our like restrictions to like sitting on the rug, I kind of stopped certain things and now I'm going back to our daily community circles. So daily, like coming in, getting in a circle, how are we feeling? And then doing like a community building like question. And then at the end of the day, I try to do another like a fun community building game, maybe like I love my neighbor or a name game. So just really trying for students to connect with each other, because that's something that I noticed in my empathy interviews last year, that it was something students complained about at our school, where they felt that they were missing connections with other students, or they felt like other students weren't treating them with respect.
Anna, I love how you connected it back to the data you gathered in the spring. That was really lovely. And I'm just thinking from an equity stance, we should have one more CNB teacher. So Amanda, in 30 seconds or less, what's something?
Okay, so I kind of just talked about how my pedagogy of being driven by some of the Western ways of knowing and being, of like scheduling and some bigger system things, has been shifted this year, that it's really loosened up. And I can't unsee or unhear some of the Western ways of knowing and being now. And it's really freeing. I do feel freed from that a little bit, and it's given permission to really slow down. And I've taken it one step further from just saying I want to connect with the students to I want to hear their stories. And so all of that circle up time and just really hearing stories from each other has built on the empathy in this first week of school. And yeah, and so we also co-construct what that looks like. And in drama, we do some skits in it, and it's been really fun.
Beautiful. Thank you for being so concise too, and sharing juicy, rich insights, even in 30 seconds. I wish I could hear from everybody. We have to move on, but I know that you all have incredibly brilliant and valuable things to share. And so keeping in mind this idea of reimagine, we wanted to go back to the equity transformation cycle, acknowledge that we probably spend the most time in the spring on listen and uncover, and really kind of slowing down and modeling that. And then it felt like we all just kind of jumped on this really fast moving train around Reimagine and cogens. And so given the data that Jamila mentioned and the time of year, we thought we could just lean in on Reimagine today. And so I'm going to turn it to Dr. J to read a little bit of the text. You're welcome to turn to open your book as well, if that's helpful. Let us know what page, and kind of frame this conversation.
Lovely. If you do have your book, it's page 88 that I'm going to be reading from, and just a couple of lines from page 89. And so here goes. Reimagine the mindset of creativity. The first paragraph. As Shane wrote in chapter 1, the test and punish era incarcerated the imagination in many school communities, driven by a top-down accountability system that marginalized student and educator expertise. The third phase of equity-centered transformation invites us to reimagine our current reality with a mindset of creativity. When we engage in this phase, we aspire to knock down the psychic walls that keep us boomeranging back to the same responses and strategies we've been using. Now that we have centered voices from the margins and begun to uncover root causes, we have an opportunity to radically reshape our pedagogy, leadership, and school culture. We can't do this in an echo chamber. However, transformational anti-racist thinking will emerge from convening a range of perspectives around the table, or even flipping the table altogether. How do we push ourselves beyond the usual solutions and the curse of knowledge? That phenomenon where technical expertise becomes a barrier to innovation. I really want to read that sentence again, but I'm not going to. Or 5 times. We bring the stakeholders we initially listened to into the conversation as co-designers and co-dreamers. And yes, that means Araceli's kindergartners, if she was here, and Anna H's second graders. That's who we're talking about. Yes, yes, yes. LGBTQIA students who have shared their stories and insights on what needs to change, and younger BIPOC staff. I mean, everyone is who we're talking about when we say co-design. And just 2 other sentences I wanted to read from these 2 pages, 89, the first sentence of the first paragraph and the first sentence of the second paragraph. The reimagine phase is about inquiry with those at the margins, not inquiry for, which can default into dangerous types of paternalism or white saviorism. But really the piece I wanted to read there is reimagine is about inquiry with those from the margins. And then one last sentence, first sentence, last paragraph. To reimagine, we must convey to everyone assembled that no idea is too out there, and we are seeking to use all means at our disposal to create new ways of being and learning together. Pages 88 and 89.
Maybe for folks who are looking at their books, you could chat something just real quick that stood out from that. Like, what's speaking to you coming back to this part of the text today as you think about the Reimagine work that you want to do or are doing in your classroom?
So Veronica says reimagine with, not for. Jessica says inquiry with, not for. Those at the margins, yes, it came out loud and clear. Perfect. Flipping the table from Amanda. Yep. Yes, Lauren. No idea is too out there.
Okay, so invitation into that mindset. And what we wanted to do is, do you all remember Gwen, who did the cogen from the video we watched in the spring? So I asked her in June, could she pull the students together and kind of ask them to reflect on what they had learned, or like, had anything changed in the classroom that they noticed based on the cogen, and how did it feel? And so we're just going to show you 2 short clips from this, like, not high tech, really low tech teacher video of a focus group. You won't even see Gwen. She's like behind the camera, interviewing the kids. And the first question she's asking them is essentially, what changed in my classroom? And the second one is something like, how did it feel to see that you were able to influence changes, right? In the spirit of sharing power. And the only other thing I'll say before you watch is, you might recall from the video that some of the feedback the kids were giving her was like, not everybody's talking. You know, she recognized there's a participation gap, right? Or a voice equity gap in the class. And one of the kids was like, we need to do a lot more presentations. I know everybody's going to hate me for saying this, but we need to be up on our feet and like talking more and more active in the classroom. So keep that in mind. We'll do 2 short clips, and then we're going to open it up to you guys to just notice what you notice, whatever stands out.
What changed in my classroom, if anything, as a result of the cogen?
I mean, I guess people started talking to different people more. Like, I got a chance to talk with Susanna. I kind of wanted to work with her since the beginning of the year, but like never really found the chance. And I got to, like, on the acting we did, was it yesterday? No, it was 2 days ago. That was fun. So I got to talk with someone new. That's just my first experience. It's the last week, so I don't know.
When we're doing all the acting stuff, it also kind of helps because there's some like humor in it, I guess, like laughing and that kind of stuff kind of helps connect people. So that helped like a lot. And I noticed some other people talking.
I would agree with the acting, because like,
Can you be specific? Which we did a bunch. So
yes.
like which do you remember as being sort of
I feel like the one for the Greek one.
Oh, yes.
the Greek myths?
The Greek myths. I feel like that was the kickoff to us talking to other people. And not having that wall in between us, that makes it awkward. It's like that, like I said before, sense of security that helps you talk to other people. And as Kim said, working with Susanna, they are awesome. And I got to work with them in another class, so it was good.
So there's one more short clip we'll show, and then open it up for some noticing.
The reason I did those was directly because you told me that this is what we wanted, and so I was like, Greek myths. That's what we're gonna do.
Since I guess I didn't pay attention to it much like at first, but after the initial meeting we did, I did, and I don't know. I guess it was kind of cool. It was definitely better to see that kind of environment in a class because it's usually kind of bad. It's a bunch of people silence. You have like tight groups of a couple people. But like in our class, there's a lot of people like capable of talking to someone like across the room or something and stuff like that.
Like literally, you could literally yell out hi, and they would reply hi back.
So
Yeah, when I started with this, I did not think about it at all. Like the day right after, I think I thought about it more, but I didn't see anyone the next day. So the next day after that, that's when I started thinking about it more. And then after that, I kind of forgot about it. So now that we are reflecting back on it, kind of weird because I don't really think of that like the changes we implemented, but it's still cool. I just thought it was just like a natural timeline, but no. Nice.
No, that was you guys. That was me thinking, I got to get them in groups. I got to get them in groups. How do I get them in groups? How do I get them in different groups?
All right, there's more to share. We're going to pause there just to highlight that. And I'm just going to open it up. Would love to hear from you all, kind of what you noticed. Start with the first one. What pedagogical shifts, subtle ones even, that Gwen tried to make based on the cogen?
Mixing up the groups.
Acting out Greek myths.
Seems like they were more connected to one another.
Yeah, I was just going to say, one of the students literally said breaking down walls, I think. So they felt more connected.
I love how someone said, like, it just felt natural.
They were able to connect with people they hadn't connected with before in the class.
There were more people talking and laughter.
Yes, laughter is a way of being, right? Is valued in so many cultural frames of reference and is so often absent in classrooms, right? But how much laughter greases the wheels of cognition, right? It allows kids to actually learn because you're feeling joy in your body and your brain chemistry is flowing. Those are beautiful observations. Anything else that anyone wants to add?
You kind of got that sense that that was the kickoff to some greater things coming from the class. You know, they said it seemed like it created this opportunity for the kids to connect in different groups. And one had even said they never really found the chance to interact with another kiddo. So you can see that the class is like gearing up towards greater things.
Love it. So feel free to add anything else that stood out, but we also wanted to ask you guys kind of an imaginal question, which is if you were to do a focus group, let's say in 2 months, with a group of your students, focal students, or maybe you've already started a cogen, what would you hope they would be saying?
That they feel heard, listened to.
That they feel empowered, safe, and heard.
That they enjoy moving in the space and not just sitting for an entire block.
That they have created new friendships.
That they're excited to see changes being made.
That they have a better sense of community.
All right. I'm so struck by listening to you all and then watching that little clip again. The belonging component of the agency framework, right? It's like 1 of 4, but how huge it is for young people. Listening to Gwen students talk about that sense of connection or that like aliveness in the classroom, the being able to shout across the room and somebody actually answers me back. It's like this touchstone, right? That I'm here, I'm a part of this community, I'm seen, I'm valued, people, I matter here. And I don't know why right now it's just like really hitting me as an educator and a parent to see how much that matters, how important that is for young people. Obviously, we've talked about this before, right? The various types of street data that are featured in chapter 3. So there's the story kind of narrative component. There's artifacts of student work. There's the observations you do as a teacher or as an admin of teachers' classrooms. And just connecting that real quick to the cogen, we just shared a video focus group, which we were kind of thinking is in that narrative story bucket, right? It's like, how are our students telling this story of change in their classroom, talking about what's shifting. And then Jamila and I were brainstorming earlier, well, if we were working with Gwen or colleagues or in a PLC with Gwen, we would also definitely want in the fact bucket to have student work from those students to be able to see, right? Like how is their mastery of, and that student work might be rubric based on their Greek myth presentations, right? How are they using their voices? How are they using the language of the discipline? Or it might be an essay they write about the Greek myth, not sure, or all of that. And then certainly in the observation side that we would want to be really paying attention because her goal was again, kind of like getting more voices, creating more equity of voice. We'd be taking notes, we'd be noticing who's speaking, who's not, and kind of capturing all of that. So that felt important to lift up and share with you all because we're going to ask you to do some similar thinking about your own classrooms and what you're trying to reimagine. Anything you want to add to that, Jamila, before I switch to the Jamboard and you can kind of preview the team time we're going to do now?
Yeah, I think I just want to say two things. So one, I think it's just amazing to see how Gwen's students evolved over time. And I love all the folks pulling out just the connection and community. I also want to just say that one of the things that we noticed with Gwen's students is that she really highlighted groups, right? She focused on groups and creating community and conversation. And that's one of those like small but yet high impact things that we can do. And I also want to say that you also can do like crazy stuff that no one's ever heard of you doing. So like you could go to the board and have a blank slate of a piece of paper and say, we need to learn about fractions. Tell me how we should do it. You all go at it, and then I'll try my best to try to do it in the way that you all said. So I just want to invite you in the spirit of the chapter with creativity. Both we can hold the things that we may have known we could have already been doing, right? That could be transformative and allow us to reimagine. And I also invite you to, like, what I have started to say is go Disney with it. Like, is there something else that you might be able to do that you were just like thinking and pondering on, but are like, no, that's too crazy, I can't do it. Go both of those ways when you all are thinking about reimagining. That's the one thing I wanted to offer. And you are actually going to have an opportunity to start doing some of that. So first of all, we think it's helpful for you to just go all the way back to where you started, just to remind yourself, what were we doing? I have internalized that BVHM has been about student engagement. I will never forget that. Remember what brought you to this group and what were some of the questions that you all had, right? As you were doing this work together. That's on, I think, 2, but I'm not going to go through all of them, but I just want you to remind yourselves of where you've been and potentially, let me see if I'm at BVHM. Okay, on slide 5, if you will, make sure you go to where you ended with us before we left to the summer. And so there are some ideas coming out for you all around what you might want to try. Just review that is step 1. After that, we're going to ask you to do 2 things. 1, figure out where you need to go next. Some of you already did a cogen. Great. You have started to think about, what do I do next with the cogen data? We might want you all to think about what you might reimagine with your kiddos. That might be where you are. Some of you may have not been able to do your cogen in fullness. You might need to start there, kind of a thing, and then, you know, get back on the cogen train. If you are in the place where you're ready to move with the cogen data you have, we really want you to think about a practice, a move that you can make that's going to shift what's going on in your classroom. Really start to think about that. And then after you do some of that thinking, we want you to come up with maybe 2 or 3 artifacts that you can commit to bringing to our next session that will really help illustrate what has actually shifted as a result of what you have done. And I can use actually you, Amanda, as an example. You were talking about circle up, right? That's some of the stuff that you've really started to bring into your drama class, right? Well, today, what's the next iteration of that, right? Or what's the tweak or the move that you're going to make to continue to reimagine on that? And when you come back, what could you bring to really illustrate how this circle up protocol that you're using is benefiting your students? Is there a particular group of kids you might want to maybe even talk to now, right? And then talk to in 4 weeks to see how they're experiencing it. Or I would love to see their performances, but that's just another thing, you know, I'll leave it alone. But anyway, each of you all has a kind of place that you're in. And the whole point of the rest of our time together is to give you space to start to think really specifically around the practices that you might want to reimagine as a result of the cogen data that you have, or a process that you might go through with your kids to do so. And if you haven't gotten to your cogen yet, we just offer an opportunity for you to do that in the next few weeks, and then for you to figure out your artifacts that you would like to bring to our last session. And then just, I should note this, on that, you see that chart with story, narrative, artifacts, observations that Shane referenced. You can feel free to just jot in, like if you're talking about a story, narrative, artifact, if you're talking about a piece of work, you can be as specific as you would like to be around the kind of artifact that you might be bringing to us next time. Oh, and your names are there to make sure everybody gets a chance to put their thoughts down. So that Post-it note belongs to you, whoever you are.
Color coded.
Yeah. All right. We're going to send you, well, actually, I think that BVHM is going to go with me into, oh, Shane, go ahead.
I just want to do a check. I don't know if other people have this question, but Jamila, would you say that on the left side, somebody's practice or pedagogy could be to go back to the cogen or to redo a cogen?
Yeah, I think yes.
That could work. Okay.
Yeah, if I'm in that place, I would need to go back to do the cogen. And I think there's a world where you might decide I think some folks did empathy interviews with students, and you might want to start reimagining from that place. That's okay, because we're not saying you absolutely have to stick to the cogen structure. It's more about you going through the ultimate cycle. So now maybe I just contradicted myself, Shane.
I think that makes sense. I think that makes sense. And then I did want to make sure people are holding that our final meeting is not till the end of November. So this is really a like space for ideation. You don't have to be stressed. Like, oh my God, I felt like the cogen timing was really stressful, and I still feel bad about that. So hopefully there's enough time to really sink in and entertain different possibilities right now. I guess this is a question for you too, Jamila, is like, I was just thinking about classroom environment. Like, could that be an area that people work to reimagine? And the reason that's coming up is this Kiva panel I did in Abbotsford with middle schoolers a couple months ago, where that was like one of the biggest things they talked about is like lighting and desks and how the energy of the room felt. So is that another example, do you think, Jamila?
Yeah, you're probably going to kill me because I'm probably going to say no to that. And not because it's not important. That's not why. But I think one of the things that you all really asked about was pedagogical moves when you came into the series. And when you think about, let's say, the example for BVHM with student engagement, yes, if the lights matter, please just shift the lights. I just want you to do that on your own. But I really want you to think about what you have heard from your kids specifically related to student engagement. Pick a practice there and then go crazy. And just so you all know, clearly we're about to give you 15 minutes to think about this. This should spur the thinking, really spur the thinking. But then if you want to go watch Moana afterwards, and then you like want to get re-inspired even further, I know I keep bringing up the Disney references, and you want to just build out further and keep iterating on whatever you reimagine, that's totally fine. I really appreciate you bringing up the not stressing part, Shane. So the answer is no, not about environment per se. That can be a next step you can choose to make on your own, but I really want to invite you all to think pedagogically about the thing you want to reimagine with your kiddos.
So one thing I'm kind of wondering about that I'm a little bit hung up on is the fact that my kiddos have now gone off to high school. So I do kind of feel in some instance like I'm starting from scratch with some new kids, and I'm worried that we haven't had that time to build like the trust and the connections just yet. So maybe some insights around that.
Okay. I'm going to pin that for 1 second and just make sure that we're all feeling pretty rooted in where you guys started, like where this whole process started back in the day, right? Mm-hmm. So the struggles of Indigenous students, particularly those coming first to you all from reservation schools, right, was like the kind of guiding impetus, the equity imperative. The hardworking Indigenous advocates, but then feeling like you weren't necessarily where you wanted to be with serving and empowering that group of students, right? And then so many beautiful questions. Maybe look at these and tell me which ones feel most relevant today, because it's been like a good 7 or 8 months, right?
For me, it's that pink one, that how can we better hear the voices of our Indigenous learners and honor these? Because I teach French, that's something that's very kind of deep for me this year, is that I want to make sure that, you know, they feel heard, and it's, you know, the colonizer's language as well, right? So I'm really kind of grappling with that, because, you know, a few of them, you know, they want to do Okanagan, and I really want to create that space where we can kind of do a little bit of both. So it's kind of hearing their voices and then also honoring, you know, their heritage.
It really stands out to me the how do we cultivate belonging in all of our classrooms, whether that's enrolling classrooms or support classrooms, particularly for me.
Yeah, similarly, I was thinking the green one, what does connection and sense of belonging look like? I feel like I could even, with us only being at week 1-ish, I could go back and maybe even do a cogen around something like that.
Okay, so what does connection, sense of belonging look like? How do we better lift up the voices of Indigenous learners and really honor what they're asking for and wanting? And then how to continue to cultivate belonging in all classrooms. Beautiful. You guys had a lot here when we paused to think about what you were learning from the cogen process. I'm just going to reread this and see. Feel free to jump in and share anything that stands out to you.
I think this is the stuff that like really stuck with us like so deeply. I've heard us all say this so many times since we've written these little post-its on the Jamboard. Like this is like the living piece that we just can't get over and we keep sharing and talking about.
Your smile says it all, Sarah, because this is where like the life started coming into some of the work you were doing with the kiddos.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if would it be helpful to take like 5 minutes, 4 minutes or something right now to just stop and jot, like just to think about, because there's going to be some convergence, but you don't have to all be doing the same thing, right? So would you like to just kind of think about these questions from your own lens first, and then we can talk? Yeah, sure. 5 minutes sound good? So maybe just jump in, whoever wants to start with kind of what you're thinking about and any questions you're wrestling with.
I have a question. I think Jess, you kind of said this, but does anyone else feel like they're just kind of restarting since they have new kiddos? Like, was what you heard really specific to your group, or is it more broad reaching?
I feel really fortunate because I'm working with a lot of the same students as last year. And like, I can't even tell you how fortunate I feel. Like I feel so fortunate to be building upon the things that we started last year. Sam literally came up to me. She's like, where's that paper thing that we worked on last year? Like she was asking about the poster that we wrote our ideas down. And so that's really sweet. I think that's really awesome. I only have 2 students that I did, like other 2 have moved on. But do you think it's cool, like just to keep going with those 2, keep those conversations, but include more voices in? That's what I was hoping to do.
You know what, Lauren, I'm sorry, I should let you all speak. It's your work, but it might be very interesting to see, you know, where one of you does a continuation versus Sarah, who's got a whole new group that had never been in our building before, and to start again. That would be very interesting to see you go round 2, maybe with better footing and a deeper comprehension of what it is and how it feels. And then for Amanda and Jessica, like whatever, if you've got, I mean, Jess, your kids are graduated out from last year, so you're kind of in that boat. I think it's kind of neat that we can see 2 different ways.
That's exactly like what I wrote. I'm starting back at listen. Like I need to discover the patterns and the themes and the hidden narratives, like right back to the beginning.
Yeah. Back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
Does that feel okay for the 2 of you? Or is there any support you can offer around that? It feels okay.
And I did kind of like my bonus cogen at the end of the year. So I have already been implementing some of the things that that group had said, and it feels good.
And I've had a couple kids already share some stuff out that lets me know that they are ready to start kind of sharing some experiences. I did say that to Elise. So I feel confident that I do have some kiddos that are brave and will come forward.
And are you mostly still focusing on Indigenous students in the classrooms, or is it more of a cross section?
I've got a cross section.
Me too, between the 2 classes, as far as like who's shared that they're Indigenous, and it should have been everyone. We've started with our land acknowledgements. So I've only got 2 kiddos, so 1 in each class. So it will definitely be a cross section.
Can each of you share briefly, like, even if you're not quite there yet, if there are particular instructional elements or like ways of planning, ways, you know, pedagogical moves that you're kind of thinking about shifting through the cogen this time?
Since the flip grid, like I've been really zoned in on the simple rule number 4, but it's because that's the one that I was like, I do it. And so like, really like, how can I do it differently? How can I do it better? How can we do it? Like that inquiry with versus inquiry for, and reimagining all of that. That's my jam. I'm like happy to continue learning there. So I think that's where I'll be living.
Reflecting on how I kind of took on my role last year, I didn't really make learning public, and I really would like to connect with families a lot more on successes. I'm guilty of being like, oh, Tina talks to the families. And so like I reached out maybe a handful of times to families. And so I really want to own that a little bit more and connect with families more and make my students' learning public. Because like, I know that will make a big difference.
Lauren, have we talked about the student-led conference in the book?
Have we talked about that?
Yeah, I can't remember.
I don't think so, not explicitly.
Okay, just what you just said made me think of that part of the book. I don't think that we really got there in the spring, but I'm going to tell you where it is because it fits what you're talking about. So like page 190, 192 is all about the structure of parent conferences that are led by students, right? Where students basically use artifacts like street data to tell the story of their learning. So given what you just said, that might be something to think about, like even a modest goal, like I'm going to do pilot 3 student-led conferences with focal students and just in partnership with the Indigenous advocates even, and see how parents, like, does that feel good? Like, how do parents take away? How do kids feel about presenting their learning? Just one seed to plant, no pressure, but.
Ooh, I like that a lot. I really like that.
Let me know if you want to talk about it more.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've also been invited, and you know, I'm not suggesting that any of you need to be there, but West Bank First Nation has invited the West Side schools and their families to go to West Bank next week. You saw it on the board, and it's to share and celebrate things that their students are doing. And we have lots of beautiful images and pictures, but it's also a meet and greet for us to go there. We've been invited to go there to share and be present on West Bank land. So if any of you feel that's suitable and fitting, then that may be also an opportunity to make the learning visible. Like if you have something you want to share, you're telling the parents, and we're going to them, which is nice. I think they'll feel very comfortable that they've invited us and we're going. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I'd be interested in attending that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know how to articulate this, Shane. I don't want it to be from me, but I want naturally some of those students to share story through modeling and collect artifacts, and for them to feel connected in the relationships through our circling up and through our activities. And that's what I'm grappling with. And I have 8 classes right now. So then I start kind of thinking like I would be starting from the beginning again. Our 6s are just coming in, but I'm also in a really great place because some of my grade 8s I had in grade 6, and the comfort level of those 8s, there is that connection already. So I would possibly start there with some of our 8s that are moving into this space. I actually said to them this today, in grade 6, you were so free to share and none of them were speaking. You could hear a pin drop in the room right now. The worry of judgment, right? Like it's a real thing in grade 8. It kicks in.
Grade 8 developmentally.
Yeah.
When you say share stories, are you talking about with you, like a la empathy interview, or more with the community, the larger community, or something in between?
Well, I think that it would need. Right now, I share a lot of stories, so it feels like it's kind of top down a little bit, but I'm hoping that it opens the floor up to them sharing story as well with each other, or experiences, or how that felt, right? And yeah.
What if you did a cogen around this thing you're talking about?
Yeah, that's, I think, what I would start. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that could be really interesting, like design I don't know if you call it like a storytelling lesson plan or a storytelling mini project that is consistent with Indigenous ways of knowing, that the kids help you figure out what that looks like. And then maybe the 8th graders could teach the 6th graders later.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be the traditional oral storytelling. It could be through mime or tableau or through something dramatic where they're doing it through the arts, right?
Yeah, super cool. All right, we have 2 more minutes. Anybody have a burning question? I feel like, Jessica, we didn't actually get back to your question at the beginning. I'm just remembering that. Can you rephrase the thing you asked when we first started?
I think it was just more or less around not having that level of trust built up with my kids and just, wanting to be at the same stage as we were at when we started this process last year, and just, any guidance around, starting fresh.
Just knowing what I know of some of your students and like how they feel about you, I think inviting them to some time to sit down with you, they'll be really excited about it. And even if it's just like to chat for a little bit and then kind of start with intention, they want to talk to you though. I know they do. They want to tell you all about themselves all the time.
Okay, that excites me, but why would they want to talk to me? Come on now.
They love you so much.
You're a good listener.
It was both ways, loves. You're such a light for them. We got such good people here. I love this.
Yeah.
Jane, can I ask a quick question?
For sure.
I'll let these like amazing teachers piggyback if they want to. But right before our group meeting tonight, we had GMS come in and we shared what our first meeting was like with you. And this lead team here, we're having a first in-person meeting at the end of September with the GMS group who we're joining with. And would it be possible for you to send us the lessons, or would you and Jamila be okay if there were some clips or things that they could also hinge to? I just want to support these teachers as they're now taking a lead, and I don't know, does that help you guys? I'm just wondering if there's anything Shane and Jamila could give artifact wise to help facilitate as we move through, even though it won't be exactly the same. We'll use our own artifacts, but some of the structure and pieces that you offered.
Yeah, somebody's coming back. Let me just let folks in. For sure, like what comes to mind? Is there anything specific, or you want to think about it and then reach out to me?
There's tons, like I take notes constantly. So if I just flip through, I will have many an idea.
All right. So team, you all have the marching orders. You are going to spend time together thinking about what you are going to reimagine. And I would recommend / invite for you all to maybe brainstorm together first, and then start putting idea, or determine if you want to brainstorm first and then put some of your ideas to paper, or if you want to put ideas to paper and then kind of talk about what you're thinking. Either one of those is fine, but I think brainstorming together might be helpful so you can make sure you're going big and bold here. Do you all need any other direction from me before I let you all take it away?
I just have a question. We're focusing on pedagogical strategies, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
In the classrooms. Okay, because our classroom teacher, we've diminished in our classroom teachers since Araceli can't join us for the next 2 weeks, and Ana Sanchez has moved schools. So but we're thinking within classrooms.
Well, now let me ask you. So Lindy, Rafa, and Anna H. Anna, you don't teach second grade anymore?
I do. The other Ana Sanchez.
Yeah, Ana Sanchez. She was already like the instructional reform facilitator, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then what I would say is yes to the classroom. And then Erin, for you, I think adult learning, could be the place that you're thinking about it. Or that might have been Veronica that was talking about specific work she wanted to do with some of the kids that she wanted to get to know as a new person. So I think that the invitation for you all is like a both and, but for our teachers, definitely pedagogically.
Well, I feel that I had to redo the cogen because the student that I have now are not the same as I had the last time I did it. And although it's still valid and I still have information, and I did actually 2 rounds, but I think that happened last year. It seems to me that it's kind of like far away. I don't feel it here with me as much as I should. So I'm gonna go ahead with the student I have this year. We're gonna try to do a cogen that is something new for them. And I'm gonna just throw the idea of motivation. I mean, what is their motivation level? What can we change? From there, whatever they want to lead. That's an idea.
Yeah, similar to Rafa, I'm thinking about the coaching that I did at the end of the year, and I'm like, it's different students. I feel like we have a different issue. One issue that they identified last year was writing, just students not being engaged or students feeling like they're being distracted during writing. And this year they love writing and writers workshop, and they want like more time for writing, and they're super engaged. So I don't feel like that is an issue I'm having this year with this group. So I would need to redo a cogen and think of another dilemma in terms of engagement or maybe like participation. I know that we could also do our work based on the empathy interviews. And what I remember, it was so long ago, I think I have to rewatch them or review my notes, but I think something that stood out to me was that some of my students felt that they were being bullied by other students in the class, and that made it hard for them to focus on the academics. So maybe a cogen about creating a positive learning environment and connections with others in the classroom.
Lindy, what do you think? Because I believe you've been doing more cogens, right? More of these sessions, right? Am I right?
You know, what I was thinking is I've been doing all of these empathy interviews, and you know, I've got 63 students, so it's quite a bit, and I've done at least 50 of them. And I was thinking it would be a good idea to spend some time reading through the empathy interviews, looking for patterns, and then see what kind of questions would jump out at me to form cogen group, or questions for cogen groups from what they've told me, because they've really told me quite a bit. And as far as last year's cogen groups were last year's cogen groups, different kids.
I'm wondering if with the new empathy interviews, you're seeing any or notice any patterns.
Well, that's what I need to look at, because I've been so busy doing them. And then with each kid, I've been doing like one a day in each class. And then another, like even in my ELD classes, because they're 7th graders, and just like, wow. So I'm still at the point where after each one, I'm just kind of stunned that I never did this before. And how much, you know, the whole shift from their numbers, because, you know, I'm such a numbers person and I'm such a data person. MBAs are so obnoxious. You know, I looked at all of their data all summer. And then that shift to who are they as people, and how can I use their stories to create the engagement and wanting them to engage. Like what, for instance, I mean, I can talk forever, Jamila knows that. One student today who's chronically absent. She and her sister just chronic absent. stuck at low level reading, will not participate. Well, she told me that last year she was witness at the hospital while her 20-year-old brother had to unplug an infant. And that she repeated first grade. And ever since then, she hasn't wanted to come to school. And so it's like, she talked to Claudia at lunch. She's going to be my focus student. And how do I figure out how to do guided reading with her as much as possible, but on a humanistic level? Like, and then she told me she wants to be a lawyer. It's like, well, we got to get past level M if we're going to be a lawyer, honey. But how do I, do that without sounding like the way I just sounded? All right, I'm done.
Well, Lindy, that was perfect because I wasn't going to say that many things, but now I am going to just help you out just a little bit. So, Lindy, that was perfect. Let me tell you why. You all have an indication of whose success we can predict right now. So, when you think I want to try to make this a little bit smaller for you all, I want you to continue all the empathy interviews that you are doing, and I do want you to do another cogen. But I also want to invite you into like leaning in faster on just two things. One is a group of kids that, whether you used satellite data or something else, that we would typically say might not be successful in the classroom. You either from numbers can look at that, or you can look at that from stories. But the whole point of the model is to kind of flip on its head that the numbers are not what tell the story of a kid, right? It's really their experience, and it's from their experience that we learn what they actually need, and we never ever do that. So I invite you to just think like, who is a group of kids that are at the margins in my class? Because a lot of your kids have already been in your school. They were in first grade, Anna, right? They were in sixth grade. They were in another grade, A or B. There are things like this particular student already hasn't been at school, right? For you, Lindy, I already kind of know that I can put a lot of love and care into figuring out what might really be helpful for this particular student, right? So there's probably a group of kids that you all can think about for your cogen. That's one. And then the other thing I want to invite you into a little bit faster is still in the area of student engagement, unless your kids are engaged start to finish in your classroom. If that's not the place that we're in yet, which is, I mean, who gets to like a start to finish thing? That's not the point. But if there's an area where you can see, oh man, engagement could be better here so that students can do better in the classroom, then I think we still stay in the realm of student engagement when you're thinking about your cogens. It doesn't mean that that shapes your questions, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you all are just going to ask kids blankly about their experience of engagement. That's not what I'm saying, but I want to keep you kind of in that vein. Kids that we know are at the margins, like we have a long history of white supremacy and oppression in this country that will allow that to emerge. And B, student engagement is something that you all talked about, again, unless you're feeling like that's different for everyone across the board. Once you kind of, let's say, go to those places faster, then I want you all to think about, well, on the cogen, Rafa, that you did, is there a way to reimagine how you do those, right? Did kids really feel safe to talk, right? Did they feel like they had did you feel like you created enough space for them to kind of be generative in the discussion around this topic? If not, then there's ways to kind of do some brainstorming there. If you did the cogen already, which actually sounds like you all are all gonna do over again, but let's say you now do the cogen in the next couple weeks and you're gonna do the brainstorming with your kiddos, then there's some ways to brainstorm and reimagine how you set up the space for them to wanna design with you. Because there's the cogen to kind of just get their ideas about what to focus on. And then there's the cogen where you're actually trying to share power and design with. So that would be my push to you all, is what I just said just now.
So then could an artifact, and I'm speaking to my colleagues, could an artifact be a video, maybe of the second cogen after you've tried to create the space where they're comfortable, and and explained what it is. Maybe the second one where you struggle through, or even the third one, struggle through trying to design how you're going to create the change that you've discussed?
I'm not sure yet. I think I need to hear what they have to say, and from there decide all together if we want to create, or we need more discussion, more talking. I don't know. I mean, why are you suggesting that it's better to do a video?
No, I just am saying we need to bring an artifact in. I'm not talking about videotaping from the starting, at the starting point. But after, a group is created and presumably it's working, because we've all shifted so much our pedagogy, and they're comfortable sort of to look at how it's working with the design and how it's working with the implementation. I know last year my kids were talking about taking notes, sitting and taking unobtrusive notes, like what do you call those, tick marks for who participated, because that was what we were talking about. We were talking about how do we increase class participation. So that was one thing that they came up with, because I certainly wasn't going to tell them to go sit around and I worked in the factories in between college and graduate school, and I had to stand behind sewers and tick off their times. Ew, I would never do that.
I think that's another possible artifact. I mean, because I was looking at the agenda, just that, like who's participating in the class and who isn't. So I think the video, in my opinion, could be one, but I think there are others that doesn't feel like the right artifact.
And I'm thinking now, I mean, I'm building up from what we're discussing. Today, for example, I had a great moment that a student at the margin participated for the first time in math. And she was very, very engaged. She was really, I called just randomly. I use a machine, so I don't pick any student myself. And somebody else was picked, and a student who is not at the margin at all. And that particular student I'm referring to, she said, "Can I say it?" So I asked this student, "Would you mind if she said it instead of you?" And she said, "Yeah, no problem." And she was so excited and so happy that she had this. And I was thinking one way to go is just exploring why that happened. I mean, why did she feel empowered at that moment to talk and to feel different, that, because it's the first time that this happens. Things like that, moments are just like are different within this, group, the particular group of students are at the margin. The thing is that, it may happen more often or once in a while, but I think even if I had one or two or three, I mean, that I think is data, valuable data that we may use to get to somewhere.
Based on what Jamila shared, I'm thinking to do a cogen, but now like thinking, okay, what areas could we improve on for engagement? And I'm like, okay, reading. Most students are engaged, but not all. So I could do a cogen on how can we better engage in reading, and then include my students at the margin. I don't know. And as a artifact, bring maybe a reading engagement inventory. I don't know, from before and from after the cogen.
Yeah, and I just want to say, if people are interested in my support with observations, like if you want me to come in and do a tally sheet just for you, I'm not going to keep it. Just let me know, because sometimes I can have that flexibility if that would be helpful to get some support, because it can be hard to teach the class and make the artifact if it's one with observations.
I was also wondering if we were going to come together as a group before November 30th for a check-in, because that seems like an awfully long time.
We can. I can follow up on that offline. Yeah.
yes, I was also going to say we're going to offer an opportunity. If hopefully you all are going to do your meetings like you were last year, but we're also going to offer an opportunity for coaching if you all would like that in between. We're more than happy to do that. Anna, I was going to ask really quick because I don't want to steer you too far into like just reading, right? As you're thinking about what feels really important to you this year in terms of, let's just say, growing your practice in general, what have you been thinking about?
I was thinking about building like relationships among students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so is there a way to think about building relationships and student engagement at the same time?
I don't know. I can't think of one. I guess like my mind just goes to like the core subject areas. But yeah, building relationships, yeah, in math, partner work, group work, creating more partner work or group work in like reading, math games.
I think you're onto something there. I think you're onto something. Team, is there, can we think about building relationships and student engagement at the same time? I feel like already you just said some really dope things, Anna.
I took a workshop last summer where they did a mid project check-in to give students feedback. And I did that last week, and they were like, oh, but we're not done. I said, no, you're not done. And no one's grading this. I'm letting you know if you're on track. And that seemed to build relationships because it seemed to show that I was invested in their success. You know, I didn't want them just to turn in a project at the end and then have to go back and redo it. I wanted them to know now, 2 weeks out before it's due. And they really responded very well. So I guess when they respond well, that's relationship building, isn't it?
Well, it's 5:16 and you have 4 minutes. Let me just tell you all are very, very brilliant with your collective minds here. I heard a lot of great ideas, and now I want to give you a little bit of time to kind of narrow and decide what you want to reimagine. Anna, by the way, if you want to do more thinking, I'm more than happy to do that offline, but I feel like you already started saying like all the things that you need. I really do. But I want you all to take some time to think about, okay, given the discussion you all just had, what do you actually want to commit to reimagining? And if it's going back to your cogen, that's great. Just make sure you think about 2.0, right? After you do the cogen, I heard Lindy starting to go down that path, which is great. And then I heard lots of different examples of artifacts you could bring, and I didn't hear any answers that were bad answers. So take some of that time now and get your sticky and your ideas up there.
I think.
All righty, Lindy, you are our witness for today. If you would do us the honor of just sharing your observation and whatever comes up for you.
First observation was the energy and trust that everybody emanated. Everyone left their cameras on, and it really didn't feel like 3 months had passed since the last time we were together. And so that's a kudos to our facilitators, right? Because creating this community. And then I also noticed everybody was talking about change, you know, and the layers of shift to change and looking at the person and not the student. So I guess that's what we're supposed to be doing. And so to come back after a 3-month break, there really was a shift that went on, is what I noticed. Lots of examples were given. That's very helpful. Lots and lots of examples. And the facilitators also honored the gap, because it was like, go back and review and what you did on your Post-its, on the Jamboard, and review a page in the book. And then that idea that together we know a lot, because in our breakout room, Jamila really jumped in and gave some feedback after everybody had spoken. And that was very helpful because together we do know a lot. So that's my witness.
Yay! That was so great. Thank you for being the witness. That was so fantastic, Lindy. I'm so happy all of you all are back. So great. That was just so great. Okay, that was really great. Okay, so we are going to do a closing circle. That was just like encapsulated so many different things. And so many of your other comments are just really sticking with me. Oh my gosh, awesome. We want to do a closing circle and give you all an opportunity to just share a word or a phrase that you are sitting with as you get ready to leave this space temporarily. Word or phrase, take about 10 seconds to think about what that might be. And then I'm not going to call on anyone. I'll just open it up for you all to share. And maybe I'll just begin with the phrase, overwhelmingly grateful. I just can't believe this.
Reinvigorated.
Fired.
Energized.
Reconnect.
So many new ideas.
Opportunity.
Dreaming of possibilities.
Transformation.
Ignite.
Sense of belonging for the students and sense of belonging here with you all. Feels really nice.
Motivated.
All right. We are very grateful to have been with you all today. I hope you feel like you have a sense of direction as you go back into the reimagine phase and as you're like teetering between listen and uncover and reimagine at the same time. We hope you all feel like you have a sense of direction. And we are very excited to come back on November 30th. We are really hoping that at that time you would have done your cogens again. If you're going back to that, you would have really tried these things out and you'll be able to bring some artifacts to share what has really been the impact of this work. And so we really invite any kind of video that you want to bring, but also student work that comes as a result of what you all are doing. And if you're doing cogens again, even grabbing the work that kids have now and then being able to compare it later could also be useful. But we're very grateful. We're looking forward to seeing you all in November. And just like a double, triple, quadruple shout out to Jennifer for all the time and effort on this video for this series. She's the one that had this idea. So, like, you know,
because I became such a super fan of you guys. And like, I didn't share with the one word because I didn't have just one word. But all I keep hearing in this fall of 2022 is just how desperately just sad and unmotivated and depressed all teachers are everywhere. And so this gives me so much hope because I know that teaching as a profession right now is about as bad as it could possibly be. And so to see this energy in this room and to know that it's coming from this work, because I know you all are not in like better schools than everybody else or anything like that. So it's just super inspiring. And it makes me so excited to get this out to more schools. So thank you so much for sticking with it.
All right. Thank you, friends. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.